Chapter 20. The Beguiling Charms of LIZA MORA. Though my responsibilities had lessened, there were still many I had to tend to. I still had to deal with getting Mickey back on his feet, able to take care of himself, so he could live a normal life. A tenant on the 4th floor was moving out, and I jumped on his room as soon as I heard. The 4th floor was the best in the building, the nicest views, cleanest bathrooms, and the coolest neighbors. The day I moved my stuff into my new room, I couldn't believe how big it seemed. Even though they were only about 190 square feet to begin with, it seemed like a mansion compared to the bedbug-ridden micro-closet Mona and I had been living in for so many months. We got it set up really nice. Mona loved the extra space, too, running around in circles and jumping on the bed and sniffing and snorting with approval. We made it quite cozy in there. I almost felt human again. For extra money, which Mickey and I both needed desperately, we started our little video production company. We hit up businesses all over town, offering to make little commercials for their websites. We did one for a tattoo parlor, some restaurants, bakeries, an artisan cheese shop in Silver Lake, and about 20 how-to videos for a real estate developer who wanted to teach people how to flip houses. We were making good money at it, and more importantly, Mickey's doctors told me to keep him working on the editing, because it actually helped reconnect some of the cognitive and motor functions in his brain, and was helping him to heal. We got hired to shoot a pilot for a TV show by a motorcycle enthusiast who fancied himself as the next Jesse James from Monster Garage. He wanted to do a road show, visiting little desert towns and reviewing their bars and restaurants, riding down long desert roads, looking like a real rough-and-ready biker. The guy was an obvious poser, but he had the money to pay us, so we took the gig. On the first day of the shoot, he brought a little assistant along to help with getting us lunch and carrying some of the video equipment in her car. She was a cute little number named Kim. She was blonde, wore glasses, had big, shapely tits, and an ass that rappers and pimps muse about. What was even more exciting about her was that she kept making eyes at me all day long. There was no question. She was hot for me, and made no bones about it. I hadn't been with anyone since Lourdes, and I was aching for some hot, dirty sex. We were shooting some footage in my neighborhood of the motor poser riding over the 4th Street Bridge when he suddenly got a flat on his bike and needed us to get some tools to fix it. I Googled a place over in East LA, and me and his assistant Kim set out to find what we needed. But we took a little detour first. The second I got in the car, I started filling her up, reaching down into her blouse and playing with her nipples. I unzipped her little cut-off jean shorts to discover that she wasn't wearing any panties. As she drove along, I fingered her bald, soaking wet little pussy. We kept driving around looking for a quiet place to fuck. We wound through a hilly, secluded road deep in the heart of East LA and parked in an alley. It was a beautiful area. Hillside bungalows, roosters crowing in chicken coops, lush with sagging palms, jasmine, and lemon trees. It could have been somewhere in Mexico if you didn't know any better. It was a magical little street, and I doubt I'd ever be able to find it again. We kicked the seats back and attacked each other. I peeled off her shorts and got on top of her and pounded my fat cock into her as hard as I could. When I was about to pull out and come, she grabbed me around the waist and pulled me back in and demanded I come in her. She said she had an IUD and there wasn't anything to worry about. So I obliged and shot my hot cum deep inside of her. All of this while the poser and Mickey sat roadside waiting for us to get back with the tools. We rushed over to the hardware store. Before we got to shopping around for the tools, we snuck into the bathroom for another go at it. She got down on her knees and started sucking my cock. I sat on the toilet and she got on top and rode me. I went a long time because I had just come in her 15 minutes before. I don't know how long we were in there, but it was a while. I came in her again, and we got ourselves together and went out to buy the tools. I guess it just felt good to know that someone else wanted me. For a long time, I was made to feel like no one else could possibly love me. Lourdes made sure I understood that and would make a point out of saying so often. When we got back with the tools, the poser looked pissed, blurting out, "What the fuck took so fucking long?" I stood right in his face and said, "We both needed to come really bad, so we found a place to fuck." I stood there glaring right into his eyes, daring him to say something about it. If this fucking phony wanted to test his tough guy act with me, I was more than raring to go. Everything I'd been through over the past several years had turned me into a hardened man, ready to go right over the edge and take anyone along for the ride if they wanted to pay the price of the ticket. He didn't say anything, of course. He just got his tools and started fixing his little bike. Mickey stood there looking a little dumbfounded. Kim stood there looking at me like what I had just said had made her hungry for another go-around. It was a good day. Then a phenomenon occurred that has had the most skeptical and cynical minds like mine baffled for eons. The second a man starts getting laid, other women sense it, somehow know it, and want in on some of the action. This was never truer than when I started seeing Kim on a regular basis, then also started getting bombarded with text messages from Lourdes. Suddenly, she wanted to hang out, get lunch, watch movies at my new place, and even spend the night. I told her that I couldn't take her up on her offer because I had started seeing someone else. "Oh, really? Well, la-dee-da. Tell me all about her," she texted. I sent her pictures and told her how we met and that things were going well so far. But then, I was absolutely stunned at her response. She wrote back in a furious storm of text messages, sending me and Kim straight to hell, calling me every name in the book, cursing us, saying that if she ever saw us together, she was going to drive her car into Kim and smash her against the wall, that she was going to track her down and, I quote, "smash those stupid glasses into her face and pound it into a pile of mush." I was absolutely flabbergasted at just how crazy she went, and just how crazy she really must have been in general. This woman had tossed me aside like so much trash on 5 different occasions, made me feel like a worthless piece of shit, and now she's pissed that I found someone new? It was the most batshit crazy thing of all batshit crazy things I had ever experienced. After a couple of days of damning the both of us to eternal hellfire, she finally stopped texting. I guess I pushed a button. Apparently, I wasn't as worthless to her as she would have liked me to believe. Some months had passed, and Mickey was doing much better. He had almost recovered most of his memory, but was still dealing with depression and being extremely irritable. But his doctors told us those were symptoms of what's known as post-concussion syndrome, or PCS, and that it would get better over time. We kept looking for video projects, but had sort of run out of ideas, when one day I was driving down Washington Boulevard and saw a sign I was very familiar with for Road King Diesel, my old boss Raul's outfit. I pulled into his yard and saw him working on my old wrecker. Since the days of putting me through truck driving school so I could come work for him, he had built a tiny 3-truck roadside assistance company into a small empire with trucks all over the state. He looked well and happy to see me. I asked him if he wanted a commercial for their website. He agreed to it right off and gave us $500 to make it happen. The first day of shooting, we were setting up a shot in Raul's office. He mentioned the business was good, but he had a problem keeping dispatchers around. It was a stressful job for someone who didn't know the business or how to talk well. My unemployment was going to run out soon, and it occurred to me in that moment that I should ask him if I could fill the open position. As soon as I did, he agreed to hire me. I knew what the job entailed and was always good with words. All I'd have to do was learn the computer system. Being how bad the job market was, I was extremely lucky to find a job on my very first attempt, and the garage was just a half a mile from the hotel. I've been working for him ever since. Mickey found work as well, as a background extra on movies and TV. I told him I had done it in my youth, and that there was an agency for extras that would keep him working all the time. All he'd have to do is show up, sit around doing nothing for hours, then be told to walk across a room or sit at a table in the background of a scene, and that's it. And being that he was still struggling with some mental issues, it seemed easy enough and something he could do without thinking. He even got a new truck and started on some new supplements and medications that had his mood better than it had been in months. In no time, he was back to his old self. He was lucky. Some trauma cases, even one so simple as falling off a skateboard, would sometimes never be the same again. Mickey had been plowed down by a 2-ton truck and fully recovered from it. It was remarkable. With all the new free time I had, I started back at the gym and had gotten in fairly good shape, losing some 65 pounds since my time driving trucks. I started looking really good again and took to posting pictures of my progress. As a result, I started getting a lot of friend requests from many beautiful women. I'd messaged with many of them and managed to land dates with every last one. My neighborhood was perfect for dating. Since I had been gone, the neighborhood had become a real trendy area, with restaurants and bars and fancy shops right downstairs. I'd invite my dates over, and they'd be swept off their feet by how cool it all was, and with my standing in the scene, and in my newfound confidence. I was on a hot streak. I had always been in long-term relationships, one after another, and had never been a one-night stand kind of guy. But I suddenly found myself in a flurry of romantic entanglements. One tenant made a point out of saying, "Damn it, man. I've never seen a guy coming and going with more beautiful women in all my life." I was as shocked by it as he was. There were 12 of them in all, actually. I called them the Dirty Dozen. The 12th of which was a real stunner. Stunning enough to be the one to sweep me off my feet for a change. Her name was Dee. I had known her for a long time from the scene. She used to date one of my bass players back in the day, but I hadn't seen her in many years. We got to talking one night on Facebook, and she sent me her number and said she'd rather talk than type. I was very eager because she was an absolutely gorgeous woman. She had a tiny frame, all of 100 pounds, slight, 5 feet tall, alabaster skin, with impeccable taste in fashion, music, and literature. We talked all night. We started seeing each other every day thereafter. She was extremely attentive, wanting to be together as much as possible, coming by every day to spend the night, hypersexual and affectionate. One day we were eating lunch at a sidewalk cafe on Franklin, and when she finished her food, she climbed in on my side of the booth, wrapped herself around me, and started feeding me. It felt amazing to be shown such affection publicly, as Lourdes and I couldn't even hold hands in public for fear of someone seeing us. I thought to myself, wow, I guess all my good karma is finally rewarding me for some of my selfless deeds. We even took a romantic road trip up to San Francisco. We stayed at a house that belonged to a friend of hers in the Richmond district while she was away on a trip. It had a perfect view of the whole city. We rode around town on buses and saw the sights, had dinner at a great place in Potrero Hill called Goat Hill Pizza, with a table that had a view of the skyline. We took long, foggy walks along Sunset Beach and went to the Cliff House for creme brulee and coffee. It was an amazing time. When we got back, we decided, though admittedly hastily, to move in together. It had been on my mind anyway because the management had been offering money to tenants to move out. They wanted to transform the American into a hip, trendy boutique hotel for hipsters that would spend a couple $100 a night to stay in. They offered me $3,000 if I'd get out. Dee needed a place too, because she had some conflict with her current landlords. Aside from that, I had already spent a dozen years at the American, and didn't want to be just another fuddy-duddy old cunt standing on the corner talking about my big dreams and how great it was in the good old days. Some people who lived there for longer than I had done little more than that, and wasted their lives doing a whole lot of talking, and not nearly enough doing. The place just held too many memories for me, good and bad. It was time to move on. A friend of mine named Ian and his girlfriend Candace had a place in the valley. I had been there many times. Ian was a sound engineer and had been helping me record the narration for the documentary. It was a lovely little guest house above a garage behind an old Spanish-style mansion on a very swanky street in Valley Village. It had a very secluded feel, sitting at the back of the lot, surrounded by trees and tall hedges, laced with morning glory, jasmine, and bougainvillea, with a beautiful swimming pool and air conditioning. They wanted to move a few miles away to a house in North Hollywood and asked if we would like to move in. I took Dee by to check it out. She loved it, and we decided to take it. We met the owners and signed a lease. And for the first time in many years, I was making a little love nest with a woman. Sounds great, right? And it was at first. She had great taste in decorating and set the place up beautifully. But then she pulled the most dramatic and profound 180 I had ever seen, one that made Lourdes' flipping and flopping pale in comparison. She went completely cold on me, unresponsive sexually, needling me about every little thing, getting upset if she found Mona's hair on the furniture, and insisting that she slept outside on our patio. I didn't object about that at first, because it was summer and the nights were warm, and she had never had the chance to be an outdoor dog. She was always crammed in little rooms with me, only getting walked a couple times a day. Here she could roam the grounds and be outside. But that didn't satisfy Dee. Nothing could. I was a bull in her delicate little china shop. All her furniture was vintage, tiny, and fragile, and I wasn't. We just weren't a good fit. We'd fight viciously over petty things, cursing at each other for hours, going to sleep sad and angry. I woke up one morning and told her that she had to find a new place. And as suddenly as she came into my life, she packed all her things one day and left. I didn't know how I was going to pay the rent by myself. I had enough to move into a cheaper place, but I had a hard time finding one. The real estate market in big cities all over the country had exploded, outpricing everyone with a low income into roommate situations or into moving to smaller towns where the rent was much cheaper. I got up my nerve and asked my boss for a raise. He said I had been a great employee and raised my pay by $150 a week, more than enough to stay where I was and still have plenty left over. So that's what I did. I made this place my own. I had enough of dating and swore it off. I needed another woman running roughshod through my life like I needed a hole in the head. I didn't date or even socialize much for over 18 months. Then I woke up one morning, turned on my phone to see a very surprising barrage of texts. It was Lourdes. She had sent me about 20 pictures of her pussy, and shots of her on her hands and knees with dildos shoved in it, and her asshole, and of her fingers inside herself. I was floored. They were followed by texts saying, "Let me see that cock. I want to jack off together." I hadn't been with anyone for a long time and was lonely and insanely horny, especially for her. She was still the sex goddess she had always been, and I was at her beck and call once again. I complied with her request. I sent every good dick pic I had on my phone. She replied with a video of her having an orgasm and one of her pushing a dildo out of her ass. I had one orgasm after another. This went on for days, to the point of being almost too much. I finally had to say something, texting, How about instead of all this texting, we actually get together to fuck? She wrote back, I'll try and make it over, but Ken is getting super demanding of all my time, needing help at work with promoting the shop. I'm busy all the time, but I will work it out, I promise. Then I didn't hear from her for a few days, until I woke up one day to a text saying, Go on Pornhub. I have a profile on there. I'm online with a bunch of hot guys and girls jacking off. Make a profile and get in on all the nasty comments. It's fucking hot. Lourdes and I had always had fantasies about being a couple that had sexual flings with other couples. It was a proclivity I had going way back to my high school days with Violet, when we'd get all worked up talking about it as kids. I never went in for boring, regular, vanilla sex, and always had extreme tastes. I don't care who knows it. Most people are subnormal as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure that reflects in their sex lives. Lourdes and I shared this concept of polyamory and reveled in all its devilment and sexual potency. It was a side of me that harkened back to my Roman ancestors, having great wild orgies on the banks of the Tiber, and random indiscriminate sex with many partners. I was in touch with this part of my psyche, so she knew I'd be game. I got on and made a profile and started following Lourdes. Her profile name was SluttyPussy666. She posted some of the same nasty pictures she had sent me, and she was right. It was hot fuck action to the max, Jack. She had only been on for a day and already had over 1,000 followers. I read all the comments from men and women of all shapes, sizes, and colors, commenting on her photos and sending her their Snapchat addresses so they could jack off with her privately. That's what everyone on there was doing. Every profile had a Snapchat address attached to it so they could get off or meet up or whatever. Technology had allowed for everyone to become his or her own little porn star. At first, she would keep me abreast of all of her online encounters, telling me about a hot couple in Denmark that she jacked off with all day, or a guy in London who could suck his own dick, or 2 lesbians from Arizona who got off with her, and I ate it all up, jacking off till I was cross-eyed. We'd talk about certain comments and have a laugh, or get turned on by them. It was a lot of fun. But then the texts started coming less frequently. Then I stopped getting them altogether. I'd write her to ask her what was up, but she wouldn't respond. I felt myself sinking back into the dark, empty feeling she had gotten so used to leaving me with. I felt that withdrawal coming on, and I felt it hard. I couldn't believe that I let myself get sucked back in. I got online and saw that she had been exchanging comments with lots of people, inviting them to her Snapchat, so I know she wasn't too busy to be online. I wrote her and asked her about a particularly raunchy comment that one guy had made. She wrote me back right away and said, "Look, I don't need you up my ass about every guy that comments on my profile. Be a man and deal with it. He's hot and has a huge cock, and I jacked off with him for hours last night. You know what? I don't think you need to see my profile anymore. I'm blocking you." What in the flying fuck? You're the one who invited me onto your profile in the first place, for the express purpose of getting into the comments together. You crazy fucking bitch! I screamed. Be a man? Be a fucking man? I wouldn't have even known she was on there if she didn't say anything. And now I'm not a man? I was angrier than I had ever been in my life. At myself more than anything. This bitch had fucked with my emotions for the last time. Something snapped in me in that moment, and then it hit me all at once. I had a plan. I knew how I could become a man all right. I'd become a woman. I got online, and sure enough, the lousy cunt had blocked me. I went to a Tumblr page that I had been following for a while of a woman who lived in Central California. She was a webcam girl and was right up Lourdes' alley looks-wise. And why? Because she looked a lot like Lourdes. And Lourdes being the obvious narcissist that she was, I knew she'd take to this woman. I screenshot about 20 of her nastiest pictures and saved them to my computer. Then I signed up for a new email account on Yahoo under the name LIZA MORA. I made up that name out of being sick of Lourdes' lies, so I was gonna LIZA MORA to get even. Get it? Lourdes was a consummate liar, but I could lie better, lie more. What I really wanted was to see just exactly what she had been up to with me all these years, what she really, truly thought of me, even though it was painfully obvious that it wasn't much. I created a new profile using the email account and made a whole new online identity. Just a few minutes after I put Liza online on Pornhub, she was inundated with over 100 friend requests from men. I accepted them all to make the profile look all the more legitimate. Then I made a few friend requests of my own, namely the Lourdes and some of her most prolific commenters. And most vital to my operation, Liza made friends with my actual profile, which I had dubbed Horny Devil 72. I know how crazy this all sounds, and I'll grant you that it was indeed unhinged and insane. But I was beyond caring anymore. She had driven me to this pathetic task, a pointless one of simply hearing her say in her own words that she thought I was a useless piece of shit, even though I already knew it was the case. It didn't matter. I had to know, and wouldn't stop until I knew the total truth once and for all. Lourdes accepted Liza's friend request and messaged her right away. Slutty Pussy 666. You're fucking sexy, you big-nippled whore. We should snap. I want to see you play with that hairy pussy. That was a problem, since I couldn't very well snap with her or anyone else for that matter, without revealing my true identity. I had to make something up, and I had to do it quick. So right off the top of my head, I came up with a great excuse. Little Liza. Hey, Slutty Pussy 666. Thanks for accepting my friend request. You're sexy as hell, too. And I'd love to snap, but I don't have one. And I'm just on my laptop, which doesn't have a camera. The only phone I have is for work, and I can't do anything on there that isn't work-related because my boss checks. The last girl that had my position got fired because she was surfing the web on her phone. I can't even take personal calls. Plus, I have a super jealous husband who would flip the fuck out if he knew I was on here. Slutty Pussy 666. Oh, I get it, girl. No worries. I have a jealous husband, too. He doesn't know about my profile either. Been having fun on Snapchat, though. If you ever get a personal phone, you need to get on. I've already hooked up with so many hot guys through it. It is life-changing. You have to do it. My heart was racing when I read that. She had been fucking other people. Strangers, no less. I don't know why that surprised me, but it did. She had always told me that the only reason she cheated on the butcher with me was because we were so close, and because I was so special to her. But I guess her attitudes had changed. I had to know more, so I wrote back. Little Liza. Wow, that sounds hot. I get a lot of messages from guys wanting to meet up, but I have twin boys, and my husband doesn't let me out of the house for 2 seconds. This is my only kinky outlet. I couldn't believe how quickly I was able to come up with this bullshit on the fly. I have never written fiction, because believe me, dear readers, none of what you read here is fiction. It happened just as I've told you. But it's nice to know that I have a knack for making things up. We chatted on. Slutty Pussy 666. I feel you, girl. I have a daughter, and my man is up my ass all the time, too. But I make time, because there is so much hot young dick out there that I just have to have. Little Liza. Right on. Yeah, there are some hot ones. Most of them are pretty lame, though. Same old messages like, hey, what's up, beautiful? So boring. Slutty Pussy 666. LOL. You've got that right. Most of them are pretty dumb, but I'm not into them for their intellect, if you get my meaning. Winky face. Little Liza. Ha ha. Yeah, girl, you go. There was this one guy that really got my attention, though. I think he follows you, too, called Horny Devil 72. I actually chatted with him all night. He's a writer and a boxer, drove big rigs. He's smart and funny and really charming. He's a big guy, really fucking handsome, though. And he really knows how to talk dirty. I really have a thing for him, to tell you the truth. Slutty Pussy 666. What? Holy shit, dude. I used to fuck that guy. Now we were getting down to the nitty-gritty. I inquired further. Little Liza. Holy shit. No way, girl. Okay, give me the lowdown. Dish, girl, dish. Slutty Pussy 666. Oh, yeah. We knew each other for a long time and were good friends. Then we ended up fucking one night, just on a whim. It didn't mean anything to me, but he got all sprung apparently and started talking all this love shit, so I kicked him to the curb. I was just out to have a little fun, but he got all serious. I kept him around for a while because I was bored, and he would buy me things and take me out to eat all the time, but I never took him seriously. I was the one who got him to come on Pornhub. We were going to fuck again, but then I started meeting way hotter, more desirable guys, so I shit-canned him. Then he started asking me a bunch of questions, so I blocked him. You can fuck him if you want. He's actually got some skills in bed, but it won't make me mad or anything. He was barely a blip on my radar. Well, there it was. I wanted the truth, and I got it. Her treachery was complete. Not only did she lie about how it all went down, knowing full well how I felt about her in no uncertain terms long before we ever fucked, but also confirming that I was nothing more than a tool for her pleasure, a free lunch, an errand runner, a tongue for her clit. So I wrote back, Little Liza. Oh, wow. Sounds like you took him for a real ride. That's cool, I guess. Shame, though. He seems like a really good, loving person. I mean, why else would you be friends with him for so long? Slutty Pussy 666. Meh, he's okay. Like I said, I was just bored. He was better than any of the other options I had at the time. Poor gullible sap. I really had him thinking he had a chance with me. He had no idea I was just hustling him. Probably never will. Guys are so stupid, am I right, girl? Little Liza. Ha ha. Yeah, they're clueless, all right. Well, I hear my boys fussing in the other room. I may have to delete this profile at any time. My husband sometimes goes through my internet search. So if I ever do vanish, here is my email. LIZAMORA621@yahoo.com. Keep in touch, you filthy little slut. Talk to you later. Slutty Pussy 666. For sure, girl. And like I said, get on Snapchat if you get a chance. There are way hotter guys than Horny Devil 72 on there. You can do way better. So on top of being a lying, treacherous succubus, she was also a cock blocker to boot. Yeah, guys are stupid, all right. I was blinded by a dream that wasn't real. Walking through a desert toward a mirage that wasn't there. It was in that terrible moment that I realized that I had pursued Lourdes for 10 whole years. A whole decade of lies and deception. But it wasn't her lying to me that bothered me so much. Because truth be told, deep down inside, I knew it all along. It was the lies that I was telling myself the whole time. That was the worst part of it all. Letting myself be fooled and ignoring my gut instinct. I strung Lourdes along for a few weeks after that, probing her about her dirty little flings, still sneaking around behind the butcher's back, fucking random guys in alleys and cheap hotel rooms, screen shooting all of her dirty pictures and her commenters' filthy remarks on them. I had a good mind to put them all together in a nice fat file and email it to the butcher. But I didn't have it in me. He was in hell with her and I wasn't anymore. That was revenge enough. Then one day I went online to see what shenanigans she was up to, but her profile was gone. I thought that maybe the butcher got wise and she had to delete it, but it was worse than that. She wrote Liza's email and gave her the lowdown. It read as follows. Dude, I am so fucking humiliated. I was Snapchatting with this one hot guy from Iowa. He had a nice body, tan, nice big cock, kinky, into ass play. He was a metal worker and had big, strong hands, and I really liked him. He actually reminded me a lot of Horny Devil 72. He was smart and charming, and I was seriously considering having something real with him. I even fucked off all the other guys I was hooking up with, and we were talking about him moving to California and starting a life together. But then he started getting really intense and wouldn't stop messaging me, even when I was having family time eating dinner with my husband and daughter. He'd be blowing up my phone constantly, accusing me of talking to other guys, and I swear, girl, I wasn't at all. I only wanted him. Then I get on his Pornhub page, and he had posted my real name, my face, my address, my phone number, everything about me, saying that I was a lying whore that was only on Pornhub to take people's money. I was absolutely mortified. I've been crying for days on end. So needless to say, I took my profile down. I can't say that I didn't take a little bit of joy in hearing that she got her just desserts, but I still felt bad for her. Liza wrote back saying, OMG, girl, that is terrible. What a fucking jerk. Please be careful. You need to be more vigilant about who you meet up with. There are creeps everywhere. Take care. Love, Liza. Lourdes wrote back, Will do. And thanks for being a friend. I am going to be more careful from now on. Take care. But she wasn't careful. She would write Liza from time to time with wild stories of her exploits. She finally got up the nerve to leave the butcher and ended up moving in with her uncle in Huntington Beach. Last I heard, she was doing a lot of drinking in dive bars, just being passed around from one scumbag punk rock barfly, one renegade biker, one ex-con after another. I can't remember when it happened exactly, but one day I woke up and realized that all the love, all the longing, all the reverence I had for her all those years was gone. It simply wasn't there anymore. I never saw her again. One hot day I was out floating around in the pool. I was remembering Ray and all the fun times we had together in our youth. and how he was such an inspirational figure in my life, and I decided I would try to give him a call. I didn't expect him to pick up. I had tried calling him numerous times over the years, but he never answered. This time was no exception. His voicemail picked up and said, "Hey, this is Ray. Leave me a message and I'll return your call." I left a message saying, "Hey Ray, it's your boy. Just wanted to make sure you were alive and well. I miss the hell out of you. Take care." And hung up. I sat the phone on my towel and went back to floating on my back, taking in the sun. But right away I got a ring. I looked at the screen to see that it was Ray calling me back. I felt a surge of blood rush to my head and started shaking. "Raymond Vaughn, how the hell are you, man?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Hey, Christian. I'm doing okay, man. Thanks for checking in on me. It's great hearing from you." His voice sounded strange. His cadence was slow and his tone was very low. He went on to explain where he had been all these years. He told me that not long after leaving the hotel, he started drinking heavily. He continued having vicious battles with depression and anxiety, and would drink in order to pass out and not deal with it. His new wife got sick of it and divorced him, and made him sleep in the garage until he could find a place to live. His condition worsened, and he became an agoraphobic, unable to leave the garage or speak to anyone besides his ex-wife for more than a few minutes. He finally had a full-fledged nervous breakdown and was committed to a psych ward where he was put on suicide watch. He had been in and out of them ever since, and was deemed 5150, or someone who presented a danger to themselves. His wife got him a condo by the airport and an in-home nurse that came to check on him every so often. He had a suicide hotline on speed dial and would call it whenever he started feeling unhinged. When that happened, some psychiatric professionals would come get him and take him to the hospital for observation. He hadn't worked in the film business in years, cashed in his 401k, and had about 50 grand in the bank. His ex-wife brought him food, and he mostly sat around all day painting, smoking weed, taking a handful of psych meds, and sleeping most of the day. All of this was stunning to hear, but it didn't really hit me until the day we planned to meet up for lunch. I called him from outside his building to let him know I had arrived. He came out to greet me. It still looked like Ray, but his once lean and sexy physique that used to drive all the girls crazy was now bloated and pale. His face looked fatter, and he had a weird bowl cut like Jim Carrey did in the movie Dumb and Dumber. "Hey man, good to see you," he said in a slow, dull tone, like how someone with a lobotomy would sound. He was still wearing the same Stacey Adams and stovepipe pants he had always worn. We went out for some sushi. We sat there across the table from each other, not saying much. He'd cram some fish into his mouth and chew it, staring off into space with red, glassy eyes. I took him for a little ride down by the beach, and though we hadn't seen each other in over 12 years, and though our conversation was sparse as we rode along, there was a very familiar feeling having him sitting shotgun next to me, just looking out the window at the world passing by, the way we once had when we were young. I took him back to his place and he showed me around. The windows were completely blacked out with heavy curtains. He had canvases all over the room. His paintings were actually very good. I offered to buy one from him, but he wouldn't sell me one. "I'll give you one next time you come by. We can take a bike ride down to the beach. I love my bike." I went into the bathroom to piss before I had to leave. There was a glass cabinet next to the sink that was chock full of medications. I I came out of the bathroom to find him in his bedroom, sitting on a chair, smoking from a vaporizer. It was almost pitch black in there, except for a little lamp on his nightstand where he kept his weed and pills. "It was great seeing you, brother. Let's make it a regular thing, huh? The boys are back. Let's go raise some hell. At least come by my place. We can barbecue and swim." "Yeah, sure, man. We will," he said, almost falling asleep as he said it. I left him there in his dark little room and went out into the dim, ghostly dusk and drove home, dragging my heart along like a bag of wet cement. To see this once vibrant, hyper-intelligent, wily, daring, and charming man, one who was probably one of the biggest influences in my life and was probably solely responsible for me becoming a writer, reduced down to this walking, talking pillbox, lost in some deep and irreversible breakdown, was one of the saddest experiences in my whole life. As I sit here tonight writing this, it still brings tears to my eyes. I tried calling him several times after that to invite him over for a swim, but he never returned my call. He too, like the rest of them, vanished from my life forever. Another ghost lost in the ether of time. But there would be another, a soul more precious to me than the rest. I had noticed that little Mona was getting on in years, and it was starting to show. She wasn't eating much, was having a hard time shitting, or even getting up the stairs. I'd have to go down to the bottom and pick her up and carry her into our place. I took her to the doctor, and they told me that I should prepare myself for the worst. She was 16 after all, and her life expectancy wasn't much longer. Then one day, while I was working, I looked over to see her on her little bed, struggling to get up. I knew it was time. I called her vet and told her that I wanted to get her put down, but that I couldn't leave my place because I was working. They told me that there was a guy they used all the time that would come out and do it here at home. That sounded great. I didn't want to take her to do it on some cold metal table in a doctor's office anyway. I called him and arranged for him to come by around 6 in the evening, giving us 4 final hours to be together. I took her out into the sun and sat with her on the grass, my eyes welling with tears. Then we went up and laid on the floor together. I held her to me and cried onto her little body. I cut up some cheese-filled hot dogs, and she managed to eat every last bit of them and fell asleep for a little while. Then I got a call from the euthanization specialist saying he was outside the gate. I buzzed him in. When I did, Mona got up from her bed and went out to the balcony, almost as if to say, "You're here for me, aren't you?" He was a very nice man, a white Dutch South African, an Afrikaner as they are called. He sat with Mona on the carpet for about 10 minutes. He felt under her belly and winced. "Look, brother," he said with a thick accent. "She has tumors all over her spleen. Even if she could survive an invasive surgery, which I don't think she could at her age, it could only stave off the inevitable for a little while. It's better to put her down. She is almost completely blind, and she can't hear very well. Her quality of life is very bad." I knew what he was saying was true, and gave him the okay to proceed. I picked her up and put her on the bed with me, and caressed her little face. He gave her the first shot. She whined a little bit and buried her face in my chest, and fell fast asleep. Then he injected the lethal dose that stopped her heart. I kissed her one last time. He wrapped her in a little pink blanket and carried her out. As I watched them drive away, I came to the realization that Mona had been the only truly loyal, completely devoted bitch to ever love me. So what now? Well, I spend most of my days cruising over the Hollywood Hills, down Mulholland, the way Ray and I once had on our Vespas, out of our minds on LSD and gin, hooting and yelping with the coyotes. I cruise down Outpost Road and into East Hollywood to get Mickey and take him out for breakfast at the House of Pies in Los Feliz Village, or over to the Vista Theater to watch a movie. I started collecting succulents and lined them up in little pots on my patio and watched them grow and change color. They're kind of like my little pets now that Mona's gone, though no one could ever take her place. I go to eat sushi on hot summer afternoons, ride my new beach cruiser along the Venice Beach boardwalk, and started practicing transcendental meditation. I wrote another book called You Can't Lose If You Don't Want to Win, Memoirs of a Charming Loser, and another called Violets and Vitriol. I finally finished the documentary and had a premiere. About 50 people showed up. It was a hit with a few people who've seen it. I ended up posting it on YouTube so people could watch it for free. I dedicated it to my father and Uncle Robert. You should check it out sometime. I have a podcast and have a lot of beautiful people from my past, artists, bands I used to play with, sex workers, strippers, dominatrix, and porn stars. We get drunk and high, and the shows just end up turning into all-night parties. In the summer months, I wake up in the afternoon, put on some sunscreen, and float around in the pool, dreaming up ideas for books and reminiscing about the past. I went on Tinder and bedded down more women in the last couple years than I can even recall with any degree of accuracy. I heard a million sad stories from them all about their terrible ex-husbands and how they cheated on them and how they cheated back, and the beatings and the lying and the divorces, all of it a living nightmare. I too have had issues with anxiety, trust, and intimacy ever since my days and nights with Lourdes. But they all taught me a lot. They were all broken people from broken homes in a mad and broken world, just looking for love, some romance, some good feelings. And what the hell else was there anyway in the end? Possessions come and go, but our interpersonal relationships that we have in our lives are the only things that really matter. I don't know what comes next. My father and his father only lived to be 49. I'll be 47 in July. And last year, my mother was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. So that specter has loomed large in my mind for a while now. Maybe my whole life was about coming into existence and falling in love with Lourdes and getting my heart broken. And if that were the case, and in spite of all the pain and misery it cost me, it would still have been a very noble and worthy way to spend a lifetime. Because the pursuit of love is never a waste of time. I still believe that. I look in the mirror at an older face. Time and all of its chaos has aged me. My hair is totally white, my beard too, and my eyes have a tired and battle-weary stare. I had survived the long and lonely roads, the hard labor, the junkies, the dock workers, the cops kicking down my door, friends and family dying on me, the lying, cheating, insane women, the loss of love. I'm still here, still alive and full of passion, vitriol, music, and laughter. Lourdes, I know you thought you hustled me, and I was your fool to be sure,
But you were a fool for throwing away the one person who would have loved you unconditionally and moved mountains for your happiness. And I know you wanted to seem tough to Liza, making me out to be little more than your fuckboy. But I know you meant what you said when you were feeling love for me. You were just incapable of sustaining any one feeling for me for any length of time. Maybe you wanted to destroy me for daring to love you as much as I did. Or maybe you were just too broken to accept that kind of love. It wasn't your leaving that made you crazy, because I could get behind your reasoning. It was all the coming back for more that I never understood. But I thank you for the brief time we had together, and all of the vital and important lessons you taught me. Most importantly, discovering the deep well of love I can have for someone. I still think of you and have little conversations with you in my mind and dream of us, young and wild, and fighting the world together. I still dream of your smile and your sweet kiss. I'll miss you forever, but I have learned to live on in spite of that. You see, the thing is, aces never fall. They may slip, but they never fall. And I'm an ace. And that's that. The end.